right, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneurial Development Podcast. I'm your host, Mouzon. Have a great guest for you today. I only want to bring on the show people that are actively in the world of entrepreneurship or actively beginning to think like an entrepreneur. And this is a gentleman, we've just gotten a chance to interact a bit, but we connected on social media where most of us connect these days. Because it brings the world together. But this is a guy, definitely, I'm respecting his hustle and what he's able to do and what he's done in such a short time on this earth, right? But being in a community and being in a space where he's really creating business and really jumping into the entrepreneur space. So without further ado, Mr. Evan Gilbert, thank you for being on the show, Evan.
Thanks for inviting me, Chris. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely, man. So we just jump straight in here. There's not really a lot to talk about because we're going to talk about it throughout this entire episode. But let's just jump in straight to you, man. Give me the origin story. Tell me where you came from, how you got to this point, how you grew up. Tell me, like, as Gary Vee would say, comic book episode number 1, right? Like, tell me about that.
Well, I don't know if anyone wants to hear like the full origin story. That'll take quite a while. But I'll start with my passion for entrepreneurship. It was actually, I was pretty lost in high school. My last year in high school, it was a great time socially. It was a great time party wise, but wasn't really a great time scholastically for me or academically. So
How come?
Oh, it was a lot of parties. I was out partying like every weekend, having a good time with the people that were there. And looking back on it, even to this day, like I just wasn't ready to, or not necessarily wasn't ready to do this whole school thing. I just really wasn't, how should I put it? Wasn't really motivated to do it. I didn't really see a point in it. So I finished high school and I pretty much went the direction where I was told to go. Just go to college, go to university, go there right away and you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out along the way. So that's what I did. And I was in school for about a year and I was just doing a bunch of random electives. I didn't really know what I was interested in. And then I think it was a year and a half after that, there's a big acting community where I live in Vancouver. It's known as Hollywood North. So there's a lot of different TV shows, movies that get filmed here, like Deadpool's filmed here every so often. And so what I did was I had to convince my parents first that I wanted to I was able to get a recurring role on this TV show called 100. It's on Netflix and the whole first season was filmed up in the mountains around 45 minutes where I live in Vancouver. And it was a recurring role where it was 3-4 days a week. So I had to convince my parents that, hey, I just want to go do this for the next like 4 or 5 months because that's how long the seasons are. And then I'll make enough money and I just want to go travel. So I first caught the traveling bug back in 2012. So actually I lied. So I only did a full year. So 2011, 2012, I did a full year of school. And then I did a volunteer mission for Habitat for Humanity. I was able to get that through. My dad actually works as a police officer for the Vancouver Police Department here. And it was a volunteer mission with Habitat for Humanity. So we went to go build a couple homes in Kenya, Africa. And it was such an incredibly humbling opportunity. It was great to get my hands dirty and actually do some manual labor. Sure. It was such a great experience to be able to do that. But then when I came back to school after that volunteer mission, I knew that there was more. Right. I wanted more out of life. So then I traveled again that summer. So summer 2013. So fall 2012, I did the volunteer mission in Kenya. Then in the summer 2013, I did a month and a half of backpacking with a buddy of mine through Central and Southern Europe. And then I just, all I had in my mind was just travel. Yeah. So then I wanted to just make money. So I was able to travel. So that's where I actually went in and started doing more background work on TV shows and movies. So I got this cool gig on the 100 for about 4 or 5 months. And then after that, I was able to afford to stay in New Zealand for about 4 months. So I went down to New Zealand by myself. This is the first time that I actually went to travel on my own. Okay. And I learned so much about myself. But there's this book that I brought with me. It was definitely a mistake at the time to bring this book because it was so big. So it was, like, have you seen the, I think it's the Steve Jobs autobiography.
Yeah.
Have you read that one?
I haven't read it, but I've seen it.
Oh man, it completely changed my outlook on where I wanted to go in life. Excuse me, I just got it. Yeah, it completely changed my outlook on where I wanted to go in life, and learning his origin stories and how he got started, how he was lost. He didn't want to go to the traditional school system at all. And then it got me to research a lot more, and how a lot of business owners and a lot of wealthy people, they actually didn't go into the traditional school system. They didn't go into university, didn't go into college. So when I came back, I just wanted to figure out, like, what kind of stuff was I passionate in. Like, I kind of liked acting, but I wanted to kind of have my own voice to go along with the acting. So that's when I got into broadcasting school, and I got into more specifically radio broadcasting.
So back up for a second, Evan. So how old were you when you were like traveling, like living in New Zealand and the Habitat for Humanity? How old were you?
I was 19 when I did the Habitat for Humanity, which was in 2012. So yeah, 19. And then in 2014, when I was traveling on my own, I was like 20, and then turned 21 while I was in New Zealand.
Got it. So
yeah.
go even further back. What's the conversation like? This is interesting for me. What's the conversation like between you and your parents when you're telling them your aspirations now of just being a world traveler?
They're very they're taken aback at first, but they kind of saw what they knew that I was going to be able to learn a lot more about traveling on my own than I were to learn in a traditional school setting. So inside of a classroom, everyone's got their laptops all up and pretending to do work, but they're all on Facebook, they're all on like Reddit and stuff. So I knew personally I wasn't really learning from it, and I pretty much just had to tell them that, hey, I just want to be able to do this part of education, because my parents, they went to school for straight 4 years after they're done high school. They're baby boomers, they're in their 60s right now, and so they did the 4 years in school. Then they traveled after they were done school. They haven't really heard of someone traveling while they were in school, because then they thought that I would get lost, or I would like go off and like go and leave and not come back or anything like that. Yeah. So it didn't really take much convincing. They kind of knew that that's where I was more passionate about, was traveling.
They basically supported you. They basically supported the decision. Do you have siblings?
Nope, I'm an only one. So it was a little bit harder for them to like come to grips with that and like push me out and like do my own thing. They want me to like be on that straight and narrow, follow what they say. But you know what? I just knew that this was something that I really wanted to do. And I knew that every time that I went traveling, I always learned something. And that wasn't the case when I was going to school. It wasn't that every single time I would step in the classroom, I would learn something.
Right.
I would always learn something. Like every day I would learn something while traveling, because it's just always a new experience. You're in a new place, new people. You got to be more social, more outgoing. You can't really stay introverted, especially when you're traveling on your own. You can't, because then you're just going to be completely lost and you're going to be stuck on your own, and then that's just not a good situation whatsoever.
Especially out of the country. But that's interesting to hear that. So I know your dad is a police officer. Was your mom an entrepreneur? Was she always at a job? Like
No, she did retail. So she did retail when when she was first getting started, and then verged into being a stay-at-home mom. So she was a stay-at-home mom for about 12, 13 years, and then went back to work after, when I was able to actually make my lunch for myself when I was 12, 13, and went off to high school. So
got it. That's interesting, because not a lot of people have that support system, right? For parents that are baby boomers, typically, right? My mom's a baby boomer, but typically for people that have parents that are baby boomers, and they put you in this path of go to school, get some higher education, whether it's college, university, whatever it is, right? They are normally less they're less lenient when it comes to making the decisions, the big life decisions of, hey, I just want to go do this. I just want to travel. I want to experience the world. I normally they keep their children bogged down in a place of, you got to go get a job, right? What are you going to do for work? And that happens so often. So it's interesting to hear that your parents, even though they came from a very, traditional background, traditional upbringing, they still allowed you, their only child, to have the freedom and the leeway to say, you know what, at 18, hey, I'm going to go overseas. Hey, I'm going to live this other life, right? To be able to travel. So that's really interesting in your journey. And I think a lot of people, a lot of listeners can get value from that, to understand that, like, hey, sometimes your parents are supporters, but sometimes people aren't going to be supporters. And regardless, if you understand where you want to go and what, right, is really pulling you, if you just speak about it, right, you can go do it. You can go make it happen. So that's exciting, man. Not a lot of people have those huevos, right, to be able to do that at 18 and 19. But as you're coming back from New Zealand, and what is now your experience? Now you've experienced life outside of the States, or you're in Canada, so outside of Canada. But like, what now is your thought process, is your mindset like when you're getting back?
Now I pretty much just wanted to get the ball rolling, go have a bit more structure. So that's when I decided to go back to school, but it wasn't really a traditional school where I went to. I went into a trade school. And that's where I learned how to go into broadcasting, go into radio. And it was interesting because we had our own campus radio station, which was actually live on the airway. So there's always a few thousand people that are always listening. And I was able to learn social media there, but I really wasn't really into the social media aspect. I didn't respect it at the time, looking back on it, because that was the big money maker, was through social media. But I was able to do like more organic posts, create some content for the social media pages, schedule it through Hootsuite, learn all that stuff. And I just thought it was just kind of like a waste of time. Personally, I was more into the aspect of like talking on air and going into radio. And then from just learning from someone while I was traveling, actually, was to just be a bit more forthcoming. We had to seek out our own internships with the broadcasting program. So we had to go out of our way to actually like apply for them, when all the other programs that was inside of that broadcasting, like the journalism one, the television one, they all had they all got like their pick of like what internship to get. We had to go out and seek our own, which was a little unfair at the time in my thought process, but it was actually much better, because then it curved the people that weren't actually serious, and they're like the ones that were kind of like dilly-dallying a little bit, and they got left behind, while us who seeked out those bigger opportunities, like I got to have an internship with one of the biggest media companies in Canada, Rogers Media, here in Vancouver, and the equivalent of that in the States would be NBC. Okay. So I was able to get an internship with there in my actual hometown of Vancouver. Nice. And a lot of people had to go venture out into the rural areas, go out of province, go to the middle of like Saskatchewan and stuff. And sure. I wasn't about that. So
what did you learn by being there? Like that's a pretty big internship.
It was good being there it was a month-long internship. It was free. And looking back on it, like some of the stuff that I did, it was a little redundant. It was kind of like, hey, like burn these CDs and like put these in a lock, because they still had CDs where they needed to like burn for the radio stations, and they needed it to be digitized. And this was in 2017, and CDs haven't really been relevant in over 10 years. So I'm like, it took you guys like over 10 years to kind of like do this and wait for me to come. Like who wanted to do this before? No one really wanted to do it. So it was learning through there, but I also got to revamp some of the music on one of the stations, which was really cool. Go over that. And that's how I was able to get hired as a team leader on the promotion side for one of the radio stations there. Okay. Was actually just through my knowledge of the music, knowledge of the demographic, which was pretty cool, because I had a big diverse music background growing up. I love every single type of music that you can put in front of me.
Favorite music though? Go. Favorite music?
My favorite music personally, making me choose between my children.
We all have a favorite child.
Yeah. Right now, like, I don't know. I'm in more of like a pump up like pump up phase, because one of my jobs is actually that I still have to this day because I meet so many like really good corporate clients is through a premium service job that I have with a hockey team.
Okay.
So I kept that one because first off, it's like having free season tickets. I have to actually watch the game during it because it's a union job, so you have to watch out for pucks during play. So I have to sit down. I'm inside the arena bowl. They give me like a little iPad type machine to do like food and like drinks or whatever, but someone else brings it down for me. So it's like I can't really give this job up. It's really good pay, and I'm meeting a whole bunch of people, and I've actually been able to get clients from that job.
Sure.
So they've actually cranked the music up because the team's been really bad the last few years. So the noise level's been really down over the last few years. So they've cranked the music up by like 10 times. So I can't hear anything anymore. So all they're playing during the warm up now is like Migos, like Ric Flair Woo or whatever. So I get down for some of the really basic trap music or whatever right now, but I love everything. So
that's interesting.
I've been to a whole bunch of music festivals and stuff like that. I've seen like whole big ranges, but that's kind of like that's something that's a bit of a different topic. Like the radio station I worked at, it was like 80s hair metal.
Okay.
80s hair metal stuff. So, and I was pretty knowledgeable on like the 70s, 80s, 90s style music that they're going for that demographic. So
has music always been a passion? Like, has that something that's always been in you, or it just started like when you started working at the radio station and doing stuff?
No, I always loved music. I did. My parents are very involved with me being in the creative side. It was mostly my grandmother who installed me to go and do piano. So I did piano from when I was like 4 or 5 years old until I was probably about 12 or 13.
Got it.
So I did all the classical stuff back then, and that's what really got me involved with music. And then I started I got my own mixing table when I was like 15, 16. So I did some like DJing events, and I was able to pay for the machine just by going out and doing a few parties when I was in grade 11, grade 12. So when I was like 16, 17, 18, I was able to just like pay off my like machine just through like whatever liquor that way they have, or they would give me money or they would give me food or whatnot, which I thought was so cool. I'm like, well, I'm just here to like play whatever songs I want to for an hour and I get free stuff. So yeah, it's definitely always been a passion of mine. And I've always had a love for music. And that's just from my like upbringing a little bit, was from listening to like really like rock styles, and then seeing the music transition, like top 40 words transition into more like rap. And so like my school kids would always like rap. My hockey friends would always like rock style.
Right.
And then I always had this classical stuff in the back of my head whenever I was at home. And then one of my buddies loved country. So it was just getting all of these things all intertwined or whatever, which I think is actually like broadened my horizon for music. And that's why I actually love traveling, is from just being able to like listen to something that's brand new that I've never heard of before and just go straight into it and dive deep into it.
You know why? Because a lot of people don't understand that, but like music is cultural, right? And so like when you get into a lot of different music genres, you actually are becoming more cultural, right? You're actually diving into the culture of whatever that genre is. And that goes hand in hand with you wanting to travel, right? And getting into other cultures and other places. And that's what it would make sense that you have a background or a love for music, because it's all cultural. So now you said from the internship, they hired you at that media company?
Yeah, they didn't hate me. They didn't hate me, so they hired me. So I was there for about 6 or 7 months, looking back on it last year. And it was really cool. So I had to just fill out some client requirements. So I had to get a whole bunch of emails for a community college or something like that. It was a really weird giveaway because it really didn't mesh with the demographic. So I didn't really understand what I put in that complaint, but it's a big corporation. So like my complaint, like, oh, it's got to get like, dealt with like in a meeting in Vancouver. And then like, if it gets approved there, it has to go to corporate in Toronto. So it was just like, I was just kind of like disenfranchised a little bit with that whole process, but it was a really great learning experience being able to lead a team. So I led a team to go out to different demographic events. So be it concerts or if there's some festivals going on, and being able to interact with festival hosts. So planning, organizing events. That was really cool. Really good skill to learn to actually like to interact with people and learn through influencer marketing actually. And I didn't realize this at the time, was using the power of our social media to get into these things for free. So we would trade them a few posts for getting into the event. So we would post something to like post it on air, or we would post it on our website, or post it through our social media in exchange for something for us just being there. So companies would pay thousands of dollars to have their like little booth set up while we would be there for free because we'd exchange it for a social media post. And I was thinking back on this after I quit. I was like, whoa, that's actually like pretty smart of them to be able to do. And they didn't even have that big of a following either on social media. So that's actually like how I was able to kind of grasp that a bit more, because there's so many people with like millions of followers online, but they can't monetize it. They don't know how to. And this big company who only had like, I think it was only like, they only wanted to do organic stuff, and they only had like 20,000 Facebook links or something like that on their page. Like it wasn't even that much, but I would use that as leverage to get into places for free, which was interesting. So did that. I did blog posts for them, social media posts, content. I did interviews as well for them. So it was just a really great experience learning all of that on the back end, seeing how the promotion sides work, how giveaways work. A lot of it was psychology too, and getting people to like sign up to different things, and how they were able to collect emails and collect data, even though they didn't know how to utilize it at the time. I know now how to utilize different data and organize them into lists and stuff. They still don't know. Like I've seen my corporate company, because I went up to them last year and because I started to learn more about like digital advertising, and I asked them like, hey, like we should do some like actual ads, because I know how to do these targeting. You guys have a whole bunch of lists, you guys aren't really utilizing it, and I can like put your social media pages on steroids. Right. But of course it's a corporation. I'm on the lower end. So not much really came about of it. And it was really funny because a couple months ago, I actually saw the first ad from the old radio station that I worked at. Oh my God, it was so bad. So bad online. Their targeting was just really terrible. No like engagement. There's no call to action, no nothing on it. So looking back on it, I was like, oh, thank God I'm out of there. But it was interesting to see how the payment I was getting through that, through the company I was with, was much lower, and the amount of work I was doing was probably about 4 to 5 times more than what I'm doing now, which is really crazy to think about. And I'm able to make like 4 or 5 times more money just by freelancing first and then going into business after. So I quit my corporate job in October of last year, and then I ventured into online, because then I'm like, oh, what the hell am I going to do now? Like now I'm just kind of lost. I'm stuck. So then I started a podcast project, because one of my mentors from school actually has one of the top podcasts in Vancouver. It's called Todd Hancock, who was on, he had one of the most popular radio shows for 14 years, made too much money, and then they ended up just axing, which is what happens in broadcasting jobs. And he actually mentored me on how to like deal with podcasts, like do contracts and find sponsorship, even though you didn't have any like viewers or following or anything like that. So it was a really funny story with him. He told me that his first time getting an actual sponsorship was just through, I think he went to one of the casino companies like River Rock Casino or something like that in our local area. And he went up there for a meeting, and the only thing they asked him was to see his phone, because he was asking, I think it was for $10,000 to $15,000 or something like that in sponsorship. And he had no views, no listens to. He was just this like big radio guy transferring into podcasts, like had no following whatsoever. And all they asked was to see his phone. First thing that came up on his phone list from working in radio, Chad Kroeger from Nickelback. As soon as he saw Chad Kroeger from Nickelback, like his phone number on his phone, they're like, all right, here's the money right away, just from his connection. So like no matter what job or what kind of be it you hate it or you love it, just always have those interactions with people. And as soon as your own almost like not really like a following, but as soon as your connections are able to grow, and it's still who you know today. Absolutely. And the more people that you know, the more people that you interact with, then other people are going to be able to see. And that's something that I've been able to translate into myself. So when I started my own podcast, I do a lot of interviews with people who I find interesting, but they're also like a little bit more higher status. So it's funny how you mentioned a little bit earlier, Chris, about the parenting and supporting your parents, because I just talked to Evan Carmichael a couple of weeks ago about about like supporting parents and stuff, and how his parents were super supportive in his vision and his dreams when he was 18, 19, and didn't question him.
Sure.
So they just went up and didn't question anything that he did. And now he has the largest entrepreneur channel on YouTube. He has almost 2 million subscribers.
Yeah.
And I actually got to interview him after he interviewed Tony Robbins. So it was 2 minutes before he was with Tony Robbins, and then I got to interview him.
How did that happen? Tell us that story, please. Like, how did you make that happen?
So I like to reach out to a whole bunch of people. So I have if your listeners don't know who Russell Brunson is, Russell Brunson has this top 100 list, so Dream 100 list, and he just said make out a Dream 100 list and then just message out to these people. So Evan Carmichael was on my Dream 100, so I just sent him an email, not really thinking anything about it. I think a really good thing to do is to follow these people on either YouTube or whatever, and then hit the notification bell. So whenever they go live, whenever they do any of this sort of stuff, and you want to interact with them, have that bell, like some sort of notification that lets you know like when they're on and when they're live, because you only have 5 to 10 minutes to get on and be there for when they're live to get your question in, because then they just get flooded with questions, and then the first 5 to 10 minutes is only when they're able to answer those questions throughout the whole hour. So that's how I was able to do it. So I emailed him, and I also went on to one of his lives, and it's just like, Evan, I want to interview you. Like, can we make this happen or whatever? And then he saw that my name was Evan as well. So he was like, yeah, let's make it happen or whatever. He's like, I'll get my assistant to like message you over the next couple of weeks and find your email, because he gets flooded with emails all the time.
Right.
So made it happen, and took like a few weeks to get some of the timing right. And then I had no idea that he was doing anything before it. And of course, me being me, I left it to the last minute. I was like, oh crap, there's an hour before the interview. I knew quite a bit about Evan since I've been following him for over a year. So I wasn't really worried about like my knowledge and like be able to talk about, but I just wanted to see what some of his recent videos were like, so that there's a few things to kind of jump in if like because it was 25-30 minute interview. So there are a few things to jump in case we ran out of things to talk about, which would never happen with Evan Carmichael, but just for preparation. So I go in and I see that he's live 30 minutes before our interview. I'm like, oh, interesting. He's live 30 minutes before. I want to see what's going on with him. And he's interviewing Tony Robbins on that interview. I was like, what is going on? And then 5 minutes after the interview, I just messaged him on Skype, and I was just like, wow, I have to follow Tony Robbins. And he just sends me a winky face and then just calls me right away. He's just like, yeah, man. It's like, it's crazy. He's like, it's crazy how the world works, and where I'm talking how I've been able to interact with someone who talked with like one of the most legendary speakers, orators of our time within a 5-minute span. Because Tony Robbins is a legendary dude from like the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And then he just came out with his documentary a few years ago, I'm Not Your Guru, which is a great film for anyone that's, I think it's still on Netflix because it's a part of his funnel. So it brings people in. And, it's a great movie to watch, to see what Tony does and how he's able to like bring so much value to people's lives. And it was just crazy to be able to talk to someone who just talked to Tony Robbins 2 minutes earlier. But Evan's on his own mission though. Evan's like has his YouTube almost on steroids right now, because I think when I first started following him, he may have only had 15 to 60,000 followers, but now he's at almost 2 million. That's only within like a year. Wow. Like that's crazy. That's nuts. It's just from him just pumping out content all the time. And that's something that I've also learned too, because when I started to do my podcast, so I would do these nice 45-minute long video podcasts, super good. Like I love making it, but like it took me a week of my life to be able to do this 45-minute clip, and all I would get was like 100 to 150 downloads on it. And I was just like, this almost like the amount of time and energy that I've spent into this, it's almost not worth it, because I learned that I needed to grow my own audience first and then do a podcast after. You can't just do a podcast in the beginning. You need to be able to have an audience first and then go into a podcast. If you know who H3H3 is, he had his own YouTube channel first where he became this like meme, like YouTuber viewer. And then now all he does is his podcast, because he's been able to get like 6 million followers just from his YouTube, and he's been able to monetize it very well. He's one of the few, like he's part of the YouTube 1% where he's able to actually monetize on his audience. So it was just interesting to go from like going in, and I did that for a solid 2 months where I would just work all week. I would do 16 to 18-hour days of just working on this one podcast to release it, where both the video and the audio was like super high quality. And then the YouTube, I think they started demonetizing channels that had under 1,000 subscribers in around January. And then I just got super flustered with that. I was like, oh man, like now I can't really do that anymore, because even though like I wasn't really getting paid much by YouTube, I think I was only getting like maybe $5 to $10 a week or whatever, but it was still something to like that I was able to like see grow.
Sure.
And as soon as they took that away from me, I wasn't able to see that monetary like kickback, even though it wasn't anything, but I loved seeing it grow and grow and grow every single week.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got so disenfranchised, and I just delved into like complete online entrepreneurship after that. So that's when I was able to find my mentor online. I was able to go into digital marketing. So I did a lot of freelancing work at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year for digital marketing. Got completely overwhelmed. I had like 7 or 8 clients, and I was doing everything on my own. Huge mistake. Don't ever do that. Because it caused a lot of stress for myself and stress for clients too, because I was just getting too overworked, too overwhelmed. And then I ended up screwing off to South America for 2 months. At the end of April, I filled all my contractual obligations because I left my corporate job to work for myself so that I can have the freedom of who I wanted to work with. And then I didn't have that freedom anymore because I got too overwhelmed. So I went away to South America for 2 months, and then I cleared my head while I was down there. And then I came back, and I was like, you know what? I was working too much on the business. I was working too much in the business. I need to work on the business instead. So then that's when I got incorporated this last August. And now I run a team of around 5 people. And we mainly just do digital marketing through like advertisements. So Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads, because that's the quickest way to get leads for either clients or to grow a brand, is just through digital advertising. And it was such a cool concept to be able to learn that was the way to do it, because the costs are so low. Like on YouTube, you don't pay anything for an advertisement until someone watches 30 seconds of your ad. Like you have 29 seconds to sell yourself for free.
Right.
For free. Like it's crazy. Like it's not going to be like that forever. And it's like a regular TV commercial or whatever. You're going to have to pay for that 29.5 second space. Well, on YouTube, you get 29 seconds for free.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just being able to leverage that. And then as soon as someone like stays and watches something past 30 seconds, you know that they're already a warm or a hot lead anyway, because they're already interested in what you have to say. So it's just it's very interesting in being able to learn that form of digital marketing space and digital advertising. And that's where I am today. And it's crazy how everything goes into full circle. It takes a long time to be able to think this process out, because I first started traveling in like 2012, and this has been the way that I really wanted to free myself and be able to travel, because I brought my laptop down to South America, and I was doing some coaching calls because I'm involved in a few entrepreneurial community groups as well. And I do some coaching calls with kids between 16 to 24 to help them get into business. And because I didn't have that guidance when I was 16 to 24, I just went in and like did whatever like my parents said or my friends said, or like my social pressure, like some of it like sort of my parents, but some of it was not very good advice, because they're looking at it from their own perspective, which I emphasize with, but it was not from our time and like learning things, because now you don't have to go to school. You can learn everything just through your laptop. Like the best form of education now, I think, is through like either digital courses or digital mentorship, like finding someone online, because I think they're undervalued, because people are still kind of skeptical about like online courses compared to traditional courses. Like I used to have to pay like $8,000 to $10,000 for a single course, or even like a single program for like a semester, while like a digital course might be like $997 or whatever. And the value that I was able to get in digital courses was actually more valuable than what I was learning actually going to a school, because schools, it's taught by a lot of the time like people who aren't actually in the industry. A lot of the people that was inside of my program, other than the one who was Todd Hancock, who mentored me with the podcast, he was still freshly inside that industry. everyone else was like 10 years past. So it was like 10-year-old information. And then, but you're able to like skip out, if you're able to like, if you're really good at like reading people and flushing out all the BS that's online, then
Sure.
definitely like digital courses are probably like the way to go. And you're able to kind of like speed track that way up, because it's undervalued and they're delivering so much information. Like I learned more from my mentor who was like 17, 18 at the time doing these like digital courses. I knew more from him than I did from more about marketing through him than I did from my own program, which was like
Sure.
half of it was marketing.
Sure.
So, and I paid.
I'm curious how you look at mentorship, because I have a saying, right? Mentorship over schooling, right? I've been putting that on a lot of social platforms just because our society is very big into schooling, right? Like go to school and that's where you're going to pick up all this information that's supposed to help you, but it really doesn't. I firmly believe we need mentors and people that have done it and then can guide us in the direction that we need to go. Right. So when did you find mentors? Because I know you have a top 100, like you have 100 lists, right? Like when did you understand the concept of mentorship?
I really started to learn it. Like mentorship was something that has always kind of been involved in my life because it's been outside of the, like growing up, I was very involved in like coaching and courses. Like I coached hockey when I was younger. I was able to do that because my dad also coached hockey, so he taught me a lot. So I went to a lot of these coaching seminars for hockey, and I just got a passion for teaching people. And I always wanted to be a teacher myself growing up, but I realized that like, why would I only want to influence 25 kids when I could influence like thousands of people online?
Absolutely.
Like my just being able to like the scalability of like my message, like I shouldn't like it would be selfish of me to conform it to 25 people instead of thousands of people online. But being into mentorship, like I always had great mentors, be it like hockey coaches, sports coaches, or like you can find a mentorship from anywhere. But I really like wanted to get into mentorship because I always like knew like some people go into like think that teachers are just like mentors, but
Right.
sometimes teachers are just there to like get a paycheck at the end of the
Absolutely.
day.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to kind of pick and choose like which ones are actually there because they genuinely want to help, and then which ones are there there for their own selfish reasons of just getting a paycheck at the end of the day
Sure.
and not really caring and just filling out like the minimum requirements for what they have to do. Because I had like good blend of like really bad teachers and really good teachers, so I saw kind of both sides there.
Yeah.
And yeah, mentorship is incredibly important because especially if you don't understand a certain topic, so be it like Facebook advertising, for example. So I really started to learn that last year, and I seeked out help from people that were doing it really well. But you got to offer something in return to get that mentorship. Like you can't just be like, hey, be my mentor or something like that. Like I
Right.
get messages quite a bit now where kids are like, oh my God, like I saw you like post things in whatever Facebook group that you're in. Like, can you help me? Can you be my mentor? I'm like, no. like you can't just like go out and like ask people to be a mentor. Like I would just send them a link to like my scheduler, for example, and then I would tell them rates, and then I wouldn't hear from them again. So they're not actually serious about actually getting the mentorship. They're interested in the free advice only.
Sure.
Which is good to give like every so
Yeah.
often, like free advice and stuff. But at the end of the day, I feel that if kids are really serious or people are serious about getting mentored, they'll actually do an investment of some sort, because
Sure.
then it's like school. If you go to school for free, that's why it's a big thing in the States, I know, where it's like free college, free education or something like that.
Mm.
I think that would take away from people actually like having an investment inside of the
Absolutely.
school. Like I didn't pay for my schooling my whole first year. Every year after my first year, I paid for it because my grandparents left me some inheritance to just have my first year paid for.
Mm.
And I didn't take it seriously because I didn't
You
have
didn't
an
pay
arm.
for it. You
Yeah,
didn't have to sacrifice for it, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, mentorship, it's a give and take. So if you're willing to, like, there's this one mentor who I'm meeting up with tomorrow who's actually in my local area of Vancouver. It'll be like my first Vancouver mentor in a really long time, because he has a really good podcast and he has like these really good spirituality connections and stuff. at people that are inside the Vancouver community who I want to get involved with. But I'm probably going to end up, because I know that he runs about 5 or 6 different businesses.
Mhm.
I'm probably going to, I usually don't do this anymore because I've been able, I did this like 8-9 months ago where I would work for free for someone in exchange for for a testimony or whatever. Cause that's a good way for my industry, especially for digital marketing, is to work for someone for free for a month. Just get them to do like whatever ad spend or whatever that they want to spend, but just work for them for free and just show them the results after. But for this guy coming up for tomorrow with my meeting with him, I'm most likely going to end up doing some campaigns for him for free, which I don't do anymore. But for him, I'll be able to do because there's so much upside for what he's going to be giving me. Absolutely. That like, I feel like I need to just do this stuff for him for free because he delivers so much value to me that it's like, it's the least I can do. Like he's giving me thousands of dollars, like tens of thousands of dollars worth of advice. Like if you're looking at it from like a strict value to like monetary scale. Sure. And it's the least that I can do for him is to just like help him out with this like digital advertising and help him make some more money on his back end for delivering just so much value to my life. So
and that's it. It's a value exchange. That's
where I see mentorship, and that's where I find a lot of people make mistakes where they try to like just ask for mentorship without returning anything. And I feel like you should always return something, be it monetarily or just if you have your own skills, like exchange it and just offer that. Be like, hey, I noticed that your website doesn't look very good, or hey, I noticed that I see that you're running Facebook ads, but they're not really gaining that momentum or anything of that sort. So maybe if I go in there and I help you tweak some of this out for you in exchange for like say 30 minutes a week from yourself. So just it's a give and take thing. That's where I've seen mentorship. That's the most important aspect of mentorship, is that it's not just them mentoring you. You're also should give something else as well in mentorship, because you're developing a relationship at the end of the day.
And I would say, right, like you hit the nail on the head, but I would take it even deeper to say that people aren't taught that. Right. You have to like, and that's why I asked you the question up front about like, how long have you known about mentorship, right? How do you get involved? Because I know how I got introduced to mentorship wasn't until, right, somebody introduced me to personal development, right? And once I started understanding personal development, then you start to get that understanding of, okay, if I have a mentor, it's a value exchange, right? What am I giving them in return for them giving me their knowledge, their time, whatever it is? But I don't think people get taught that. Right? There's a lot of kids that will grow up and never really understand what it means to be mentored or have a mentor, or what their role is in order to have a mentor. So I'm always curious at figuring out, how do we explain that to people? And this is one of the things that this podcast is going to be able to do, is really teach people like, hey, right, like you've just added a ton of value there's somebody out there listening that maybe wants to have a mentor but doesn't understand the process or the steps or how to reach out or how to ask. Let me ask that question on the back end, right? Like, have you always put yourself in that environment? Have you always asked the people that like you want to be around? Have you been vocal about it, or were you always like an introvert? Like how did you go about finding that part of yourself?
It's very, very interesting. So being an only child, I always had to be much more introverted, say at school, or I would have to be introverted more in like social settings because I wouldn't get that at home from people my own age. So I was always the one that got yelled at by teachers to go sit back down in my desk, because I would just go up to just go socialize, because that was my time to socialize. Like I didn't have any siblings at home who were my age, where that was able to kind of like, that I was able to emphasize with when like my current situation. Like my parents are great and all, but they're like 40 years older than me. They never really understood what I was almost going through while growing up. So I was always that kid that was very extroverted growing up. And then I don't know, something happened where it was just like one too many teachers or one too many people told me that you just need to sit down, shut up, and do your work. So then I became a little bit more introverted for a couple of years, actually. It was really weird going from like super extroverted to introverted. And then just recently, over the last like few years, I've been able to get more extroverted again and get out of that comfort zone. And it took a little while. It took like 6 years or so for me to like go back and become extroverted again and reteach myself like, hey, it was actually okay, because it was just years of people just saying, no, like don't get up, don't go talk to people, don't do any of that sort of stuff. And and yeah, it took a while for me to come back and become that extrovert, but like the worst that can happen is someone saying no to you.
Right.
Like even if you don't ask someone, like that's one of the things that I've learned throughout my life, especially from acting. Acting was one of the best ways for me to learn this, was going out and doing auditions, and everyone, like I would go out to do hundreds of auditions. No, 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 every single time. And it's not like it was anything that was my fault. Like the film industry was like very picky at the time. Like I was only 16, 17 years old. So I was only able to work a maximum amount of hours, which I didn't really understand at the time.
Mhm.
So people wouldn't pick me because they wanted me to be on set for 16, 17 hours when I was only allowed to be there for 8.
Sure.
So that's why I wouldn't have gotten picked. It wasn't anything that, no matter my ability, no matter how I look, it didn't really matter. It only mattered for them at the end of the day if they're able to keep me longer than 8 hours, which most film sets they do. So just being able to learn to understand that no doesn't actually just mean no. No just means like, okay, just move on to whatever, just move on to something next, and then maybe do a follow-up maybe a month later. Because if I get told no because when I was going out and doing meetings a few months ago, I would always get told no for our services, but I wouldn't really get discouraged by it, because I would just do I don't know if you've heard of this program called Loom. Loom is one of the craziest, unreal programs out there. It's a recording service where, have you heard of Loom, Chris?
No, I haven't.
It's a recording. This is gonna like blow your mind. So Loom is my favorite thing to use for any sort of client work, any sort of anything that I need to send off right away. So it's a service where it's a screen recorder. So it's a webcam and screen recorder, and it records everything. So you just click play or whatever, and then it comes up automatically onto your Chrome server. So you have to use it with Chrome. And as soon as you're done doing a video or a presentation, be it like 5 minutes, an hour, or something like that, your webcam's in like a little circle on like the bottom left of your screen. And as soon as it's done, a link comes up right away. Your video, you can send that link to anyone, and it happens in a split second. Or you can download it. You can download the video, but that takes probably about like a couple minutes, depending on how big the file is. But that video is accessible in a second. So all I do is just send Looms out to follow up with people. So it literally takes 15 to 16 minutes for me to follow up with someone who said no maybe a month ago, but then I offered them a whole bunch of like new value for like 15 minutes and show them like step by step, and then people are like, whoa, no one ever really does this.
So let me get this right. You're recording like basically a video tutorial type of thing, and then sending it to clients or prospective clients that you're following up with.
Yeah, all because of this Mark Zuckerberg thing about like after he went into like Congress or whatever back in April, Facebook's had to implement. This is a tip for anyone that's looking into doing any sort of like Facebook ads or any sort of digital marketing agency work. Go into info and ads on a business page, and you'll be able to see all the ads that someone, that a company or someone that's doing currently. So I'm able to go in and see these info and ads, and then all I do is just talk about the ads, talk about the copy, talk about like their call to action. I'm not too sure what the targeting is because that's all done on the back end, so I can't really see it. But I'm a big emphasizer on lookalike audiences and retargeting. That's the only reason why someone should do either Facebook ads or YouTube ads, is if you already have a list available, if you already have your Facebook pixel installed on your website, and then you're able to do retargeting ads of people who visited your website, or people that look like or would look like the people that visited your website, or even an email list. Email lists are super important as well. I know email marketing kind of died maybe a few years ago, but it came back when Facebook would use these lists and then use their AI to go after a lookalike audience of that list. So say you had 1,000 people that opted in for like, they bought something on your website. You could then use that list to follow up with people that may seem like them. So they look like them, and Facebook's able to like use their algorithm, like, hey, there's like these people like these types of pages. Oh, hey, these people make this much amount of money. Like Facebook has all this information, which is kind of creepy, but you know what? It's just the time that we live in, and it's a free service. So, and it's the best way for myself to Loom as a platform. It's the best way for me to like go over any potential clients, any of their either their lead generation forms, their advertisements, and then just kind of tell them which direction they're able to go to. And then I just send off the loom in an email, or I send it to them through Facebook Messenger, and boom, it's done. It literally takes 15, 16 minutes for you to like send over a video, which I think is crazy, because I used to have to make an unlisted video on YouTube. I used to have to like record something and then upload it onto YouTube, which would take another 10 to 25 minutes, and then like have it unlisted and then send that link out. But now I don't have to do that. It's made my life a lot easier.
Well, I appreciate that, and our listeners, I'm sure, appreciate that that nugget right there. Loom. As soon as we get off, I'm going on that website to figure it out, man, because that's always awesome. And we're gonna get wrapped up here in a bit, man. But just kind of, we've walked through a lot of your journey, kind of understood where you're at and how you got to this point. Tell me some of your biggest learning lessons, right? Like some of the biggest things you've learned by now being an entrepreneur with your business, Evan.
Time management is incredibly important in organizing your day. So I've now organized my day into separate blocks, which is what my mentor does. So he'll only work in the morning. For example, he'll only work for like 4 to 5 hours in the morning. So he'll do an hour work, then 20-minute break, hour work, 20-minute break, hour work, 20-minute break for 4 times. And he's been able to be a lot more productive with that. And then he'll do like any sort of calls or something like that, or lead generation in the afternoon, because he was already able to get his work done. Sure. The other one is to just not get discouraged at all. There's so much information out there, especially in online entrepreneurship, for what you can do. You can do drop shipping, you can do Amazon FBA, you can do a whole bunch of different affiliate marketing stuff as well. Best thing is to just master one of them. Right. Just focus on one of them. There's so much information out there online that people can listen to, and it's easy to get lost. Your job is to just focus on what you like to do the best and what you like to do the most, and become an expert at it. So with myself, I ventured into, and I did like 4 or 5 different things when I was just getting started online. And then I was like, wait a minute, let's take a step back here. Let's reevaluate and see what I'm actually like, what would yield me the most return for my time. And that was with social media marketing. Social media marketing is probably one of the best business models that is out there. Personally, like my personal opinion, I think it's one of the best business models out there, because all you need to really do is know how to sell, and then be able to read people. So being able to read either potential clients, to have what I call, pardon my French, an asshole dar, so that the clients so that you don't have any like rough clients, or like anyone that's really going to be a pain to work with. But then also when you're hiring people and you're looking for contractors to do some sort of like Facebook AdWorks for you, or YouTube ads for yourself, understand like and build a relationship with those contractors as well. And yeah, just to not get discouraged, and being able to like learn what your best assets are, and just jump straight into it. Like, don't go 50% into something, go 110% into it, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to succeed. Like Jeff Bezos didn't go 50% into Amazon. He went like 1,000% into Amazon, and now he's got like almost $1 trillion company. He's going to be I think he's going to be the first like $1 trillion man pretty soon. Which is crazy. And all he does is literally just like essentially just like drop ships a general store. That's what he did. And he started out with books. Yeah. He started out with books, and then he ventured into like having the biggest general store online. So that's a word of advice for drop shipping. Don't do a general store, because you can't compete with Amazon.
There we go. That is so true. That is so true. But hey, big points there, right? Time management. I try to teach people about it all the time, Evan. Like at the end of the day, when you become an entrepreneur, you got to make sure you understand how to manage your time, right? How to become the most efficient, productive person. Because sometimes you'll see people that are 16-hour days, 15-hour days, but they're not efficient. They could have really gotten a lot of that stuff done in 5 or 6 hours, but they let their day drag out because they still think like an employee. I always say it's employee mindset versus entrepreneur mindset. They're completely different ways to think, but you have to develop the entrepreneur mindset in order for you to be successful as an entrepreneur. You can't go into that entrepreneurial venture with an employee mind and think that you'll still be successful. It's just not the way that it happens. So to come full circle and talk about, right, that's why mentors are important. That's why getting around the right people and staying teachable and remaining coachable. Those things are just the most important thing when it comes to entrepreneurship. And it sounds like you've been able to do it well, and that you're continuing on your journey. Again, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Tell everyone where to find you. Like, obviously they've heard tons of nuggets from you. You've given a ton of value. Where can people find you?
You can find me, excuse me, you can find me on YouTube. My YouTube is Block E Media, so like a building block, the letter E and media. And also on Instagram as well. My Instagram is at the Gilby Gilb, so TheGilbylBZ. I say Z up in Canada, but Z for the listeners down in the States. I'm very active on Instagram, very active on YouTube as well. So definitely, like, just shoot me a message or whatever, like comment on a video. I'm always willing to answer back to each and every single one. And the last little thing for like any sort of time management and distraction, just want to touch on biggest changer that I did was using a YouTube ad block, or not an ad block, a YouTube blocker and a Facebook blocker. So download any sort of like extension like that onto your either Chrome, or if you're Safari or whatever. Use that as a resource, because like I get distracted super easy just by YouTube comments. I get distracted. So an application blocker is also a great way to focus on your time, depending on what you're doing. But use that throughout the time. Like, say or even shut your phone off for an hour. Just say that you're only available in the afternoon. Like, little things like this are what been able to speed up my process in order to run my agency more efficiently.
Absolutely, man. So again, all the listeners out there, he's giving you all the nuggets, what you need to do to be able to be successful in your entrepreneurial venture. But Evan, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Anything that you need from us, right? I'm always going to be a resource. Hopefully I make it up to Canada at some point. I heard it's nice up there.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah. This month it's nice, but by next month it won't be as nice.
Yeah.
I actually live in one of the areas where it doesn't snow. Like, if it snows here, it makes news.
Really?
So it's one of the nicer places. Vancouver is very nice and like very gorgeous area, and it's probably my favorite city in the whole world of anywhere that I've been able to travel to.
Got you.
Well, definitely, yeah, it's definitely worth it. Come on up here, Chris.
I definitely will. I definitely will, man. So again, I appreciate it, guys. Until next time, we are signing off. This is Entrepreneurial Development. Again, I'm your host, Mouzon. I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.